1 year after the October 7th attack, Eva and I took a ride to the Gaza border. We wanted to experiment with the idea that we can face this head on, together. Eva Dalak, a Muslim Palestinian citizen of Israel who grew up in Jaffa but whose mother's family lives mostly in Gaza and has been badly hit in this war. She has one set of experiences, very painful and traumatic experiences. And me, Elana Sztokman, a Jewish Israeli-American living in Israel, has a very different set of experiences. 2 of my daughters were displaced on October 7th. Their husbands reported for reserve duty that day, as did my son. My family and I have many friends who were directly affected by the Hamas attacks on October 7th. So much trauma, on her side and on mine. So Eva and I set out on a journey to see if we could find a shared humanity in the story. If we could, together, forge a joint vision of peace. Activate peace. Here's our story.
We're here in the Gaza Rim. We're standing here in Sapir College, across the road from Sderot, across the road from Shah HaNegev. These were some of the places that were directly hit on October 7th, and just in general have been part of the ongoing conflict for 20 years, if not more, here in Sapir College. Sapir College is a place of diversity. It's a place that is, it's a college that is run by and also serves the diverse population of this area. And they really suffered a lot of great losses. Their website has a list of about 50 names of people who died on October 7th, from students, alumni, staff, faculty. So they've really suffered. But they're rebuilding, here they're already open, they have signs for the new school year and things like that. It sort of like represents a little bit of what this whole region is going through, still figuring out what October 7th meant for them, and at the same time, trying to figure out what the future looks like. And
what the future looks like and what led to October 7th.
Right.
Very important to put that in a context.
Right.
It didn't really start on October 7th, so for me personally it's really interesting also to come and see what actually happened and how it's been reported. And also I know this area from visit to my family in Gaza when I was young, and really seeing this with new eyes, and seeing what the context of what happened before October 7th, from 48 and onward, what actually happened on October 7th that shifted. It's really a huge turning point for Israel and Palestine and the world at large, actually, with the atrocity that happened. And then what happened after October 7th, that kind of was used as a justification for a full genocide, full on, for the Palestinian population, and now onward with the war on all fronts. So I think it's a key moment, and for us to see it from different point of view, different perspective, without killing each other.
We won't kill each other.
Definitely not. So
So I do appreciate everything you're saying. It's interesting that when we talk about October 7th, you always say we have to look at the history, and I understand that, and I appreciate context, and I think a lot about what you say. There's a really important book by Sila Ben Habib where she talks about the generalized and concrete other. And where she says that one of the problems, and she talks about this issue of dehumanizing the other, and she says one of the issues in how we dehumanize the other is that for ourselves we have concrete details. For the people we identify with, it's concrete. They have history, they have context, they have names, and she talks a lot about this issue of context, right? Whereas for the other is always generalized. And that's so whenever you say we have to look at the context, I always think about Sila Ben Habib, and I always think, I understand the importance of context for sure. And at the same time, when I think about October 7th, I also think October 7th to a certain degree has to sort of stand on its own in a certain way. First of all, because what you said, it marks a certain historic moment. There's something, and a lot. I mean, it's not one, it's a lot of things that shifted because of it in a lot of different directions. And also I feel because of the magnitude of it, having lived through it in different perspectives through each of my different kids and friends, there's a lot of pain, and so, and it's a magnitude of it that I feel I just want to be present with that for just 1 second. And my real question for today is, can we be here in this place that is so full of its own layers of pain and history, and a place that is also on this border of one history on that side of the border, one history on this side of the border, one set of pains and traumas on that side of the border, one set of pains and traumas here? Can we stand in this spot and still believe in hope and in peace? Can we stand in this spot, look at this pain and trauma in the face, and still say, peace?
Yeah.
We're going to believe in peace. We're going to work towards peace. We're going to work on humanity, our shared humanity and our shared values. That's our goal today, to answer that.
And I would add peace activation. For me, really more than peace, it's really peace activation. Activation meaning the trigger. We're going to sit in the trigger. And I do want to be present to what happened on October 7th. I think the atrocity, it doesn't serve anybody to deny what happened and how awful this was. And it removed from my humanity if I'm not able to find compassion within me to be present to what happened. And so I can say I want to be present and find compassion in me to what happened, and still have compassion to what's currently happening with my people on the other side. And as you say, like, peace without activation for me is a hollow word. And for me, activation is really, we need to activate peace. And activating peace is inside of us. And this means sitting with our trigger, being honest about our trigger. And you and I have different perception and perspective, and it's okay to sit with it and still be able to hold a dialogue where your narrative doesn't deny my narrative, and my narrative doesn't deny yours, and maybe we can meet in a field beyond right doing and wrong doing. And I feel like this is really important. I really want to be present to the pain and find compassion to all that has been happening since October 7 and beyond.
All right, let's go. Here we're turning into Sderot. Sderot has been the object of rocket fire for 20 years.
Is this a settlement?
It's a city. It's a small city, and it's a tough place to live. After October 7th, 85% of the population left. The country really has not forgotten about the hostages. It's just the government that has.
Yeah, which is crazy. I mean, that's definitely a turning point in Israel's history.
It's a massive betrayal of basic values.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be Israel's values. I mean, it's human values.
Human values, yeah, definitely.
You can see here all kinds of everything. Like there's just, you can see here all kinds of everything. Like there's just, signs of hostages just everywhere. There's a sign here. What if it was your father? And there are other signs that say, what if it's your brother? And it feels very sad to me that we've come to that point, that they have to say that the hostage families have to say, well, what if it was you? And
the lack of empathy.
Yeah,
Government is amazing.
that feels like a desperate cry for empathy. You hear a lot of like Bibi supporters. They say things like, well, we can't bring the hostages back because it's not good for the people. Who's it going to benefit? I heard things on social media. Somebody on social media wrote, who's going to benefit by returning the hostages? And I was like, are you kidding me? How about the hostages? Like, when did the hostages become not part of us? For example, since when did they become someone else? Like, should we save them or not? Like, since when are the hostages them?
We drive down Road 232, past the villages of Be'eri, Nahal Oz, and others, an area where just 1 year ago, 1,200 people were murdered in cold blood by Hamas. Today it's quiet, and most of these villages remain eerily empty. Massive crime scenes. Now they're taken over by the army. We see makeshift memorials along the way, informational signs about how many were killed or taken hostage in each village. We continue a few kilometers south until we reach the site of the Nova Festival, where one of the worst massacres in Israeli history took place on that awful, awful day.
the land is screaming of pain, and I feel called actually to offer something to the land. I feel like here there's so much grief, or so much pain, so much pain that I just to be able to sit with this pain and the trauma and without comparing and justifying or friend of mine, a friend of mine.
That was probably Gaza.
Yeah.
That was the army. Probably.
That's the thing. It's like you want to be here and feel the pain of all the hostages that are still there, the ones that are killed, and then part of me is like hearing this bombing of Gaza and knowing the families that have lost so many of their members. Just finding within us, how can we hold this pain? It's just impossible. How was it for you?
How is it for me? It's intense.
Intense.
It's really intense. It's first of all, it's hard to believe that it's been a whole year because on some level it feels like yesterday, and also it's hard to reconcile the normalcy of driving down a road with all the images still stuck in my brain of what was happening. So all of those things I'm sort of wrapping my head around, and also like so much pain, so much loss, so much trauma, and you're grappling with this, and like you said, you're in the middle of grappling with this, and suddenly there's this massive boom, and it's coming from Gaza, and then you're remembering how many people for whom this is not over at all, it's still happening, so there's also this constant tension between trying to heal, trying to move on, trying to rebuild life, and understanding that we're still stuck in it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know how we can try to heal. Like, there's no trying of healing or moving on. We haven't moved on 1 inch. I mean, the main reason why this is still happening is that a lot of the population is in trauma for what happened in the Holocaust. They're not living in the present. They're not living the pain that is being created right now in Gaza. They're living the pain that they felt as survivors of the Holocaust.
At the Nova Festival site, we were connecting to the massacre of hundreds of music lovers and dancers when we were interrupted by the pounding noises of the IDF bombing Gaza just a few kilometers away. These noises of the bombing, they rattle your bones and shake the bones of your skull. From there, we drove 10 kilometers north to meet with an amazing woman named Roni Keidar. Roni, who just turned 80 years old, is a lifelong peace activist and resident of Netiv Ha'asara on the Gaza border, one of the places that was attacked by Hamas on October 7th. She experienced the killing and kidnapping of many friends and neighbors, and has spent the past year moving from place to place, still homeless. We went to speak to her to find out how she is a year later in her still temporary home, and to find out from her what has become of her vision for peace. So, a year on to October 7th, how are you?
I can't say that I'm good yet. In fact, I think I've gone sort of in a kind of regression a bit. We first moved on the 7th of October, being a very frightening and sad, and I don't know how many words I can use to express it, how we felt that day. And we were taken to the whole family. I have 3 of my children. I have 5 children. 3 of them live with me on the village with their families. So we were all going through a severe trauma. One of my daughters was locked in a closet because there were terrorists in her house, and she realized she couldn't lock the safe room. So she took the 2 children she had at home and went into the closet. And then you see, we didn't have electricity, so we didn't really know what was going on. We were in our safe rooms because there were alerts, because there was bombing as well, but we didn't know that there were terrorists all around. And then when we tried to get my daughter and she didn't answer, her son eventually whispered into the phone and said, "Don't call, we're in the closet and terrorists in the house." At the same time, my other daughter's brother-in-law came out of his house because he heard the shooting and was shot, and so was his brother. And slowly we're getting news about more and more people being killed on the Moshav, on the village. There were not many terrorists there. It seems that we were almost the first that they came to, so no one really knew what was happening. And because we have a wall right at the end of our village, the only way they could come through was to use paragliders, and they flew into the village when everyone was in the safe room. No electricity, so we couldn't really know what was going on outside. And slowly through the phone we get messages. They're here, we hear shooting, there's someone killed, another one's killed, and that's how it kept coming to us. There were 20 people killed on our village, 17 on the actual village, and 3 of the members, one of them was doing his morning routine of running just outside the village, and 2 young boys who were at the sea fishing that morning, and they were killed there. In the evening, we heard that our army had come into the village and were helping release people. My son at a certain point said, "Our phones are running out, we won't be able to charge them, we've got to get out of here." And with the help of both my son and my son-in-law, and we have many in the family in the security services, so they sent a car to get us all out of there. So we, I think, were the first people to get out of the village. We were taken to a hotel first. And then we found that being together, we are like 3 of my children, and both of my children have, are married into other families on the village. So we're like 5 families all together, and we felt that we needed that closeness, that we had to be together. And when we got a bit tired of the hotel and we felt that it was too much, too many people around, too much going on, my son and my sons-in-law started looking around for somewhere to live, and wonderful people in Herzliya just gave their homes to us.
Wow.
Really, literally.
Wow.
One of the men was a very wealthy person who lives between Canada and Herzliya. He has a house in Toronto and a house in Herzliya. And he was just about to renovate it and do some remont in the house. And he said, "Well, I can wait. Take the house, everything in it, feel at home, and just stay there as long as it takes." And a very similar thing happened to my other daughter in another house nearby. And they put one smaller house aside for us, the older generation, and we were supposed to be there, my husband and I, and 2 of my in-laws, children's mothers-in-law. And it was a very old house. Again, it was supposed to be destroyed. No one had lived in it for 5 years. And the people said, "Well, okay, we can wait. Let's renovate it." All the neighbors came in, bought furniture, painted the house, made it look presentable. And we lived there for about 8 months. We got very close to all the neighbors. The families that gave the houses in Herzliya just became part of our family. They came to visit every now and then. They said, when he came from Toronto, he said, "You give me a room downstairs so I have a place to stay." And he became part of our family. And then we knew we had to move. We had to start looking for a place. I wasn't ready to move back to the village, although there are some people who have moved back.
There are people who moved there?
Yes.
How many people were
Well,
there?
we were 300 families on the village originally. It's about 1,800 people. And now I think we can say that about 10% have returned, maybe a little more than 10%. it's not really, we're not encouraged to move back as such. It's still a military zone.
It's a military zone.
But
The
people have
whole
moved
area
in.
is a military zone?
We are the closest village to Gaza. The end of the village is the wall that separates us from Gaza.
When was the village established?
It was first established in 1973. It was then in the northern Sinai. It was then one of 11 villages, together with a town called Yamit, planned as a buffer zone between Egypt and the Gaza Strip after 67. We grew flowers and vegetables and fruit, both for export and for local market. A very good relationship among all the villages, and a very good normal relationship with our Palestinian neighbors. Rafah was our nearest town. That's where we shopped. That's where I took my driving lessons, in fact. So we do know it's possible. We can live together. We've just got to want to.
How does it feel for you now?
So some people say to me, don't you think that your friends have betrayed you? Now, my friends haven't betrayed me. I very clearly differentiate between Palestinians and Hamas. Now, I said that once to my granddaughter not long ago. And I said to her, not all Palestinians are Hamas. And she said, but Grandma, how do we know? And that, I think, is the thing that was most difficult for most people. The how do we know? Because we do know for a fact that there were people working here who were given work because we felt that we wanted to give them future, something to live for. And some of them did report back and give information to the Hamas to know exactly where to go and where exactly who lives where. And so I understand the question so well. On the other hand, I refuse somehow to accept that my friends betrayed me. I'm still in contact with many of them. And it was just, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago that one of my friends wrote me a WhatsApp message, like, you're from Gaza, and said, how are you? And I was very busy those few days, and I didn't get back to answering WhatsApp messages. And eventually he said, please answer, I'm worried about you. And I wrote back and said, oh, no, I'm sorry, apologize for not answering sooner, and said, I'm okay, how are you? And then I said, I suppose that's a bit of a silly question. And he said, no, Roni, that's not a silly question. If you're asking how I am, that gives me hope. So that is the relationship I have, and I don't feel that they betrayed me. Now, we moved to where we are today in 1982, in accordance with the peace treaty with Egypt. Something at first we tried to resist. We thought that that's, if we're talking of a peace relationship, why should we have to evacuate our homes and uproot everything we built there? But when we realized it was a question of either peace or living in the northern Sinai, it was obvious what we should do.
So you left your home.
So we left our home.
You gave up your home for the sake of
Yes. In fact, my husband is originally from Egypt, and he says the Egyptians were evacuated from his home twice. Once in 56, when Nasser sent most of the Jews out of Egypt with absolutely nothing. And once in 82 for the sake of peace. And with that in mind, after we moved, the government approached my husband again, who is a qualified agriculturist. He graduated here at the university. And with his knowledge of Arabic and agriculture, they asked him to go to Egypt and be like an agricultural attaché, agricultural advisor there. And we went to Egypt, and we spent 5 years in Egypt. Now, when we wondered at first whether we should do this or not, my husband said, what's a peace treaty? A piece of paper signed by 2 leaderships, anyone can tear it up. But if we put some meaning into that peace treaty, there's no chance of that happening. And that's why he decided he would leave everything and go to Egypt. Now, those really were years that for me were a turning point. I'm from a very Zionist family. We came to live in Israel from England in 1951 when I was a child. And my grandfather worked for the Jewish Agency and the Jewish National Fund and preached Zionism. And as far as I'm concerned, this is my home. I have no doubts about that, not even today. But when I was there, I suddenly heard stories that I never knew about beforehand. We grow up in Israel, learning the history of the Jewish people and the people of Israel, and we're very familiar with that. But there are many things that we didn't know about. And then suddenly I hear about families who had to evacuate their homes because I came to my home. And it made it very difficult for me. I started trying to work things out for myself. Now, it even gave me certain doubts. But one thing was I had no doubt about, and that is that this is my home. The only thing that changed is that I did realize this is not only my home, that it's also a home of another people. And that I've got to bear that in mind. The thing is, I need them to bear that in mind as well. And today I think I'm at a place when I try to explain this to people, then they say to me, but who can we talk to? But who can we try to make this living together plausible? And today I can understand why they don't think I'm in my right mind when I think we've got to talk.
Do you think that October 7th changed people's ideas about that whole, is peace possible, is coexistence possible,
I think maybe it strengthened their ideas. They never really believe that what I say is possible. But after the 7th of October, it just made them more sure than ever that I'm wrong, they're right.
like all of Israel took 2 steps to the right, that kind of thing?
I think so. I think so.
And what about you? Did you also take 2 steps to the right after October 7th?
No. Now, it's difficult. I remember on the 7th, 8th, 9th of October, when I had journalists and people calling me in who knew me from before, asking how I was. We were at the hotel, and I wanted to speak to them and tell them that I'm not giving up hope, but I was afraid that someone would hear me, and they'd feel that I'm betraying them. Mm-hmm. So I'd go and hide somewhere in the corner, crying my eyes out and saying, we can't afford to give up hope. I've just come out with a book that I'm writing, which is called On the Border of Hope. Oh. I think it's important because it gives the story of my life from day one and why I've reached the point of my belief today. It's not as if I woke up one day in the morning and said I want to like Palestinians. It's something I built within me, getting to know, first of all, giving my autobiography, it shows how I see people on the whole, and how I probably come to this seeing my Palestinian neighbors as well. And I think it's important for people to see. But today, I always gave them excuses when they were bombing Netiv Ha'asara for 20 years. Every time it happened, I said, look, they have no hope. They've got nothing to get up to in the morning. So of course they'll lash out at us at every possible moment, because as far as they're concerned, we're to blame. But on this, and I said, let's try and make things work with them, make them see us and we see them. And I introduced a drama group from Israel in school to a drama group in Gaza. And they had a lesson on Zoom because they can't meet because of the war on the border. So they had a lesson on Zoom once a week. And I was once there when they opened the screens and I could see these children and the excitement of meeting again after a
week they hadn't seen them. If their screens weren't there, they'd be hugging one another. I did the same with a music and dance group, created videos together, again with using today's technology to get together, to see one another. And I felt that I was going somewhere. I felt that I was on the right road. But for what happened on the 7th, I can't reason. Because I think any human being, there's a certain limit that they won't go beyond. And they did.
You feel like October 7th was something like new? It was too far beyond.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
So how has that feeling affected you?
It's affected me that I'm disillusioned.
You feel disillusioned.
But on the other hand, I feel that we have no other choice. We can't go on killing one another until there's no one left. Because it eventually, it won't be a question of either them or us, it will be neither them nor us. Because we're both getting more and more vicious as time goes by. And it's affecting us as people. I can see it among ourselves. We are far more violent than we used to be.
How do you see that?
In people's behavior, in the streets.
In everyday life?
In everyday life.
You feel like Israelis have changed?
I think so. I think so. I remember when we were in Egypt, it was the first Intifada. And I came back from a holiday in Israel and I brought a lovely picture of the family with the whole field of anemones, a red field, and their children were in the middle of it. And I was working there in the Cairo American College. I worked there, the children went there to school and I worked there. And one of the children came into the health office where I was working, and he was the son of one of the Emirates ambassadors. And he came in and he saw the picture and he said, "Oh, is that Israel?" And I said, "Yes, that's Israel." And he said, "Well, do you like what's happening there?" And I said, "No, I don't like what's happening there." But I said, "I tell you what, I'm afraid that it's going to do a lot of damage to us amongst ourselves as much as it is to us vis-a-vis Palestinians." I remember that so clearly because I did feel that was happening. And it's got worse and worse.
How do you feel about what's happening now in Gaza for the past year? Did Israel cross the line as well?
Have we crossed the line? I don't know how to answer that. So many people ask me about proportionality. We talk about proportionality. What would be proportional? If we gone into Gaza and started raping women and beheading people and kidnapping children, would that be proportionate? But because we're bombing from the sky,
Isn't that what happened in 1948? You say you were part of in your history. I mean, I'll tell you my narrative. I'm Palestinian, born in Israel. My mom was born in 1948, the 5th of May 1948, and our whole family, my grandmother was going on a boat, running away from Jaffa after having heard of the massacre and the rape of women and children and in Deir Yassin and in different places in Palestine at the time. And so they were all running away from Jaffa. And then my grandmother had contraction, so she had to step out of the boat, come down, return to her home in Jaffa, give birth to my mom, and then Israel was declared a state. And so this family was separated. Part of the family was in Gaza, my father's family was in Jordan, and my other part of the family was in Nablus. That's how we stayed in Gaza, in Jaffa. And the whole family, my mom's family in Gaza, was completely exterminated. other story that I have to say is a Jewish Polish guy that saw me one day in Jaffa and said, "Wow, you're the daughter of Muhammad Fathi. I love your father. I grew up with him. He's my brother." I say, "Wow, I never heard your name. What's your name?" He's like, "Moshe." I went to my dad and said, "Well, Dad, there's this man called Moshe that said that he grew up with you." And he was like, "Son of a bitch, he took the house of my uncle and they didn't allow my uncle to come back." Same story from my mom's side of the separation of the family, having to run away, and the story of my father not being able to come back. And I feel like listening to you and your friendship with the Palestinian, I feel the genuinity of it. But at the same time, I feel like there's an elephant in the room that is not actually addressed. This wasn't a land without people. And when you say this is my land, yeah, there were Jewish people here in Palestine for the whole time. But a lot of those that came back from Europe or from Arab state or from elsewhere. Just like now, there's a lot of Israeli that I live in Costa Rica, that come emigrate to Costa Rica and call Costa Rica their home. And there's no political attachment to it. And I feel what we are living in Israel is a Truman Show where we sold a dream that this is coming back to your land to justify the killing and the massacre of a whole nation, not acknowledging that this nation, that these people believe. And I grew up in Israel. So with the Israeli curriculum, it took me years to decolonize my mind from the story I heard as a child, because I am Arab Israeli, I'm not even Palestinian. Even my identity as Palestinian was negated. And to hear the stories of the Palmachim and Etzel and Haganah and all these amazing Jewish coming, the Tzabarim, coming to fight this Falahim. Who's this Falahim? This didn't resonate with who I was. And building a new country on a country that didn't have any people and malaria and like just this success story. I so wanted to be part of this success story, not realizing until years later when I actually left Israel and studied in France and elsewhere of like what amount of propaganda and brainwashing we have here in Israel. And that's enabled the patronizing, oh, we have friends with the Arab, we have friends with the Palestinian, they work with us or they work for us, and we treat them as human, but actually the humanity of these people, the honor that we had as a nation was completely stepped on. Jaffa, Akko, Akka, Jerusalem, Haifa, they all fell down to the Israeli terrorist group. Let's face it, we are now referring to Israel Defense Army, and we call Hamas terrorist group. If this terrorist group win the war, it becomes the defense army of a state fighting terrorist group, because that's what happened here at the time. And I know it's a narrative that is not popular or accepted, and at the same time, and that's the whole point. That's why I'm fascinated by your version of the story, and I know, and I honor it, and I feel like it's genuine. This is how you experience reality, and this is how I'm experiencing reality. And this reality is in parallel over a similar land. The massacre and the atrocity that are happening right now in Gaza, and the atrocity that happened here on the 7th of October by Hamas, are the same atrocity, if not more, of the atrocity that happened during the whole period of the British Mandate, leading to the independence of Israel, independence from the British Mandate towards a local population. So I feel like there is really something here around they crossed the line. I feel like we all crossed the line. We all lost our humanity, or we're losing our humanity because we're unable to accept that this violence that we're witnessing is violence inside of us that is being extrapolated. And it's really important to understand that this whole narrative of dying for a land, when the land is screaming, enough of that, can you please live for a land, rather than die for this land. This land is belonging to everybody. It's not for one people, one religion, one gender, one color. This is just ridiculous. And we're able to do that elsewhere. We live, Palestinian and Israelis, in Costa Rica together and elsewhere. What is it about this vortex here that makes us hate each other, dehumanize each other, and justify it in the name of my nation, this is my land, and they need to accept that this is my land. But you never accepted that this is my land. So, so I feel like this is really important to put on the table in a way that is not attacking. I'm not attacking you, I'm hearing
I know.
and that's why it's important to articulate
I don't feel you are.
good.
Honestly, I don't feel you are.
Because I feel like there's like such a trauma that there's inability to hear our narrative. We are the terrorists. Palestinians are the terrorists. Palestinians don't even exist. The Palestinians are the Plishtim that was in the Tanakh, in the Bible, and so that's why we need to continue this narrative and fight that. Like, this is ridiculous.
But if we consider them, the Palestinians as the Plishtim, then they were here.
Exactly.
We came here, so they were here before.
Yeah.
Now, when people started telling me, who are these Palestinian people that you say belong here as much as I do? Because that's my motto, honestly it is. I do feel, and I'm completely honest about this. And that's what I say in my book, all along the book. I use the American poet saying, this land is mine, this land is yours, this land is made for you and me. And that's how I feel. Now, for some reason or other, we're not being able over all these years to implement this togetherness. Being in Europe, knowing Europe, one of my daughters has left Israel and she lives in Canada. And she feels there as well. We do have a problem as Jewish people, and that's another story. We do not have a place that we can really feel that we belong. And people are helping us feel that way all around. Why? I really don't know. Sometimes I do give reasons. I do think here as well that our problem is that we are so arrogant.
Yes, I agree.
And that's what people don't like. So people in Europe don't like an arrogant Jew, and people here don't like an arrogant Israeli.
But see, I think that our arrogance in Israel is worse because here in Israel, as opposed to in Europe pre-Holocaust or whatever, we are in a position of power. So when you ask the question, why does the world hate Jews? Like I think about that a lot, and I feel like, I spent a lot of time researching issues of power, language, and abuse, and I feel like the language that our leaders often use is abusive language, is gaslighting language. When we call Palestinians liars, I was trained to call Palestinians liars, to say if they're talking about Deir Yassin, it's a lie. No. I was taught about Deir Yassin being a lie before I had ever been to Israel. Before I knew anything, I was 14, and my teacher in my Zionism class was telling us, if you hear Palestinians talk about Deir Yassin, then don't believe it, they're making it up. Literally, that was part of our
But that
curriculum.
goes the same for the Jewish people as well about the Holocaust.
What do you mean?
The number of people who say that never existed, never happened, like they're saying now, that the women in Gaza, the women taken to Gaza are telling stories and they say it's not true.
So that
you have that,
right.
definitely, you have that
Right.
in both ways. We've got to stop this. But one of the things I say to many audiences that I have is that because of my past, because of the Jewish history with the Holocaust, and because of that, and because I don't feel 100% at home anywhere else but here, I should understand the Palestinians more than anyone else in the world. And I do feel that way, because I know that in Egypt, a Palestinian is not Egyptian. He is Egyptian, Palestinian. So he also has that same feeling as we think, here in Israel, an Arab is an Arab is an Arab, doesn't matter.
what his religion is, what his background is, what countries. But that's not the case at all. A Palestinian is a Palestinian, and an Egyptian is an Egyptian. And that's why I feel that I should understand the need that the Palestinians have for a place that they can be proud to say, this is my home. Just like I do today. And that's when I say that I'm proud that this is my home. It's not that I don't consider the mistakes and don't consider the terrible things that have happened and are happening. I'm not ignoring them, I'm accepting them. And I say that it's high time that both of us come together and say, no more. We don't have to forget, but we have to forgive. And say, let's move forward, because there is so much to look forward to. Because I honestly believe that they're wonderful people on both sides, that leaving upon unity to calm down and live together, and I think we can. And I'm not even saying that I've got the solution in a one state or two state. We've got to do that together. Find the best way that we can live together. Now, when people say, where do you get your optimism from? It's not optimism, it's realism. Because we can't go on doing what we're doing now. Neither of us.
Can you tell us about your organization, what you do?
Well, Other Voice is an organization that started off here in the envelope. They are all people from Sderot and villages and kibbutzim around Gaza. All people who feel that the violence is not getting us anywhere, and that we've got to start a dialogue, and we've got to start negotiations of how we live side by side. And now we do this by connecting with people in Gaza. We even tried to manage to get people to come over to a seminar and have a workshop together for a weekend. I joined in 2010. I came back from Egypt with the feeling of the power of dialogue. In Egypt, I met a family there from Egypt, living in Egypt. The daughter went to my youngest daughter's class. They were together in kindergarten. When we came there, my daughter spoke neither English nor Arabic. And the girl she seemed to get into first contact with was an Egyptian girl. And sign language was quite enough. Somehow it seemed to click. And a few months after we were there, I saw this little girl's mother handing out birthday invitations to every single child in class, except my daughter in love. And she didn't know what was going on, and I certainly was going to call her attention to it. But the following year, the two girls again in the same class together. And Amira, this girl, asked her mother to invite him down to a birthday party. And mother said no way. And she asked why. She said, oh, because her people hates our people, so she can't come to your birthday. Amira came to school the following day, reported what her mother had said, and Val came home and said, what are we doing here? If we hate these people, why are we here? And we tried to explain to her as best we could. She was 6 years old at the time. And this went backwards and forwards. My mum said, my dad said, and they got into a bit of a row. And Amira told other children from their nationalities not to play with Val because her people hates the Arab people. And this is when I said I better tell the teacher what was going on. And the teacher gave a whole series of lessons on differences between nationality and religion and language, and being different does not mean to hate. And Amira got up and said, but this is what my mother said, and that's why I can't come to my party. The teacher's answer was, if you don't invite every single child in class, you can't hand out invitations in school. Amira thought this was a wonderful opportunity. Went home, told her mother that Mrs. Mason said that she's got to invite him back to her party. And the teacher came there. Amira's mother came to school very upset and said, you know, you're not going to tell me who to invite. And they had a long discussion that ended with the bottom line. Ivan is a lovely girl, they can play together as much as they like in school. But she can never go to their house and their daughter will never come to ours. And she said, don't ask any more questions because you're not going to understand, just accept this is how it is. Now later on in the year, it was Ivan's birthday. And she wants something out, what do I do about it? So I said, we try something out. Instead of having a party at home, we go to this restaurant in Cairo, Happy Joe. And sure enough, Amina came accompanied by her mother. Ivan was as happy as could be. Later on in the year, I had to come to Israel, leaving the family behind. And when I rang to see how they were all getting on, Ivan took the phone and said, "It's where I'm going tomorrow afternoon. Amina's mother's invited me over." From that day onwards, the two girls were regular visitors at one another's home. We parents became very good friends. Socialized, entertained, talked about lots of things, but I could never quite bring myself, I didn't think it necessary to say why and what happened. I was just glad it did. Now, the reason I tell this story, and I'll tell it to as many groups that I meet on the way, is because I think it symbolizes a great deal. Because we could have gone on with this feud and say, we don't want to talk, we don't want to fight, you don't want to come to my house, I don't want to know. But we could also find a way to meet, to connect. And that's what we've got to do. And if it means apologizing, we'll apologize. But really and truly, apologize for the past. But say, don't compare. Don't say who suffered more. Each suffering is a suffering. And let's move forward. Because this region could be a fantastic place to come and visit. If only we lived here in peace. And I really do believe it. And the more people I get to know, I know that we can do this. But we can't let radicals, whether they're on this side or on that side, rule our lives, and that's what's happening at the moment.
I love the story where you told about the two girls, because I feel like at the root of the story is humanizing the other, right? Where the two mothers started out from a place of seeing the other as, an object, not a real person, but just sort of like what I was saying before about the generalized and concrete other, is that, you see the other as just sort of like a symbol of something, not as an actual person. And these girls who didn't have that, who just wanted to be friends, taught their mothers how to humanize the other, and that worked from a birthday party invitation, from something very everyday. So I feel like that, I found that story helpful. Like I found that what you said, it's a model for something. For me, it's a model of how to make the switch from seeing the other as like a thing, as a symbol of something, to someone who's just like me, who's just like a regular person who wants to do things like celebrate birthdays and have friends, So I think that there's something very deeply true in what you described in that sense. That's what has to happen, is that we have to stop seeing each other from some kind of like politicized lens, the politicized lens which says, I'm going to tell you who you are, like the way I talk about this, the way I was brought up in Zionism was very much this like, we know what Palestinians are, these objects, as opposed to like human beings.
Now, next on the 9th of October, some of my friends from Other Voice is part of a much larger, quite a few organizations. The leading woman of this project is Julia Chaitin, Dr. Julia Chaitin. She lives in Kibbutz Orim, and she's a professor. She was a professor at Sapir University. She's an emeritus now. But she decided we have to have a day of Israelis and mostly Arab Israelis, Jewish Israelis and Arab Israelis, sitting together for a day and having the first half day talk of the pain. Talk of the pain we're all going through. We're not having speeches at this convention, we're having small groups that are going to be each in another room, and with the mediators, we'll be able to help us get through this, because it's not going to be easy, I'm sure, and talk about our pain. And then we'll have a lunch break and fight, sort of cut off the first part and move into the second part, which is called the Day of Hope. And here the groups, either the same groups or maybe they'll mix, I don't know, but the second half will be talking about how we can come out of this pain and build hope. So that's our plan for the 9th of October. It's from 9 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
So do you have
It
hope?
is,
I mean, do you have, what's your story of hope? Do you?
some days I do, some days I don't. But on a large scale, I have hope because I can't really live without hope. I've got 17 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren.
How old are you? Can I ask?
How old am I?
Yeah.
I just turned 80 this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's a big birthday.
Big birthday. And in fact, I had a reunion, a side note. There was a reunion at the school I went to, also in 80. And they asked me to speak. And when they introduced me, I didn't quite know what they wanted me to talk about, because there's certain things that since we've been away, that they might want me to talk about. When he introduced me, he said, "This is our Roni from the Gaza envelope," and the experiences she's been through and so on. So I knew that that's what he wanted me to focus on, where I am in this. And I told them about all the things I did before, about the drama group and the music group, and about sending children off to school in Gaza, and sending them to school and equipment and everything, and like sort of day camps that we organised there for children to laugh and dance and sing. And I told them about that, and then I said, and then I was doing all this and I felt so hopeful. And then came the 7th of October. And one of the people who used to go to school with me got up and said, "Well, I hope you're sorry about what you did."
Really? Oh my God.
And I was so taken aback. Because I just felt, agree with me, don't agree with me, do what I do, don't do what. But to say, "Are you sorry for what you've done?" I was, and I'm a bit of a crybaby, so immediately the tears started welling up. I didn't know what I was going to do, what am I going to say? And I said, and I just said, "No, I'm not sorry." And I couldn't really say much more than that. And then someone from another person got up and saw that I was really in a he said, "No one asked me to speak, but I can't sit quietly." And he knows a lot of what I do. He is used to be in the regular army for many years. He was a Scandaloof, whatever that would be in there. And he said, "You can't say that I don't know what I'm talking about. Roni knows exactly what she's talking about. And she's doing the right things. Because she knows that we've got to be fit together." So I'm still, I do have hope. And I feel that there's a lot of good here in Israel. There is a lot of good here. I don't have to be better than someone else. I've got to be good. I've got to be right. I've got to do the things that my values expect me to do. I don't compare myself with someone else. I don't compare myself with another, and my army with another army. I want my army to guard us because that's what they have to do. We have no other choice at the moment. But I want them to guard us. I don't want them to do all of that.
I believe in what you say. And I believe that it would only go through an honest and authentic and vulnerable deep dive in the responsibility that we each carry of the violence that is taking place in our community. And unless we're honest about what actually happened and be able to hold the multiple truths that exist here in one heart, we cannot have peace. And that's why the choice for me is really like what we have here out beyond right doing and wrongdoing. There's a field, I'll meet you there. This is the field we're creating a field of love and compassionate self-forgiveness, not because we're good or we're right. I don't believe in good or right. I believe in being human. And it doesn't matter the religion, the color, the nationality. And for me is really being able to hold who I am as a human, as Palestinian, citizen of Israel, because even when you say Arab Israeli, I'm like, for me it's a trigger, I'm like, oh, you don't even acknowledge that I'm Palestinian.
No.
I know,
From there at all.
of course, and that's not what I'm hearing. No, I'm here, I'm just meant, I'm referring to it in a way that is, you're able also to see it from the other people's perspective. And I think that's what is key, is the stories that we tell, the stories that you shared about your daughter and her friend, the story that I share about my father, my mother, the story that she would share. Because ultimately we all have our own stories. And I think the journey in our life is to detach ourselves from the story, to understand that we are all human, we're one family. Like for me, it's like there's no Palestinian Israel, it's like we're one, we're really one. And where we're heading is this unity. And we cannot create community unless we understand that there's no separation, whether it's masculine, feminine, Israel, Palestine, and all this dark and light. There's no, like, sitting in the dark for 2 years taught me that the only light that we have is our own heart. And we have to go back to the heart. And it is from the heart that I've been listening to you. And it's from the heart that I speak to you, and that we share what we're sharing, whether we agree or not agree, because ultimately we're all radically different, and we have different perspectives, and it is okay, because that's the experience in life. And that's what brings hope. What brings hope is not that we're all similar and we believe in the same thing and we're doing the same thing. No, what brings hope is the ability to hold these radical differences and continue hearing each other.
Well, that feels like what, I mean, I was like listening to the exchange between you two. You both have very strong stories in very different corners of the conflict. And were we able to do that here? Was this an example of a space that can hold multiple truths, that can hold people coming from different corners, and your story and your truth is yours and all its authenticity and all of its heart, and your story is yours with all your authenticity and heart, and we're here, we're present.
And it's an example of what
It can. I'm sure it can.
And it will.
Yeah.
I really believe it will.
Yeah, but that sometimes even saddens me, because I think of all the years we've lost.
Or you think,
All the years we've lost, all the years we've lost, all the life that we've lost, and at the same time, it's the journey of life. It's the experience.
thank you.
Thank you
So much for bringing us into your home. Thank you for talking with us and sharing your really powerful story and your courage.
Roni Keidar is an inspiring, powerful woman. Despite her enormous traumas and pains since October 7th, she took the time and patience to listen to Eva's family story stretching all the way back to 1948. Her ability to lean into Eva, even under these circumstances, along with Eva's willingness to accompany me and hold space for me and my pains, and even more so, space for Roni's story, despite Eva's own family experiences in Gaza. These are the moments and gestures that leave me with hope. Because more than anything, what I have learned from doing this podcast with Eva is this: peace will only come when we are able to sit with the life story and the traumas of the person across from us, even when that person is the very one whom we were taught to hate and fear. If we have the courage and strength to put all that hate and fear aside and to hold space for the other, even when that other is someone who we were taught to see as our enemy, then we can sow the seeds for activating peace. That is the whole Torah. As Hillel said, the rest is interpretation.